Coming up, the end of the Green New Deal. Democrat hits out at Gavin Newsom. Former MSNBC host defends Hamas supporting student. And James Carville believes that the US is in the worst crisis ever. The EPA head talks the end of the Green New Deal.
And this is what Shelley Pingree, another maniac, has just said. Watch.
I'm deeply concerned that the Republican majority is giving the administration a free pass to abandon programs that protect the public from pollution, that safeguard human health, and that address the climate crisis.
The death of the Green New scam is upon us. And there are people who are congressional Democrats who are not going to be happy with our actions. I am here to fight for, as part of that Trump mandate, earned November 5th, the people across this country who have seen a Green New Deal that, if fully implemented, would cost tens of trillions of dollars, and people who cannot afford to be able to heat their home, to purchase a car, small businesses that are struggling to operate. People have been put out of work, and it's going to end.
Zeldin is getting out of the Green New Deal because of the trillions of dollars it would cost the US economy, which would significantly impact on Americans, and most particularly those that are not so well off. It would put a lot of people out of work. In fact, in Spain, it was estimated that for every job created in the renewable energy industry, 10 jobs were lost in the general economy. And there is marginal to no benefit. We've seen a massive concentration of work to increase renewable energy, and yet what has happened? There's barely any increase in the percentage of overall energy globally that is renewable. There are better ways of dealing with this pretty much non-existent issue. I could speak at length on the science of climate change. I've spoken to literally dozens of climate scientists, including IPCC lead authors and even a coordinating lead author in my time. Then we have Brit Hume talking on the issue of tariffs.
Because that in fact is that's what tariffs are. They're taxes on goods that are being imported into this country or exported from it, and the tendency of tariffs in the short run, in particular, is to suppress economic activity, and of course it also is to drive up prices, and that's how it suppresses economic activity. So it's something I think the administration has to worry about, although it obviously believes that in the long run the tariffs will be beneficial and our industries will thrive and people will build factories here, and maybe they will, but that's not something that's going to happen to keep prices down next week, next month, or even next year. So we have a way to go here. It may take a while for the tariffs to work their way into products.
Hume talks here about tariffs suppressing economic activity, which obviously then would make things a bit more expensive and the economy wouldn't grow as rapidly. However, I disagree with Hume on the issue of the time period that it would take for the benefits to start flowing through. The reason is that there are factories that are already being built and others that are being planned for that would not have been, where it would not have been the case if Trump hadn't been months ago threatening tariffs, so companies had the opportunity to actually adapt and start bringing work to the United States. The other aspect is that I don't think that the tariffs are going to hold. I think that what you will have is other countries realizing that tariffs will hurt them worse than it would hurt the United States, and they will start to bring tariffs off, which will result paradoxically in far less tariffs around the world. And then we have Christine Quinn, a Democrat, on Gavin Newsom.
You know what voters hate? People who are not authentic. Gavin Newsom is identity shopping. He's putting out different positions, flip-flopping on the transgender issue, interviewing Steve Bannon, not challenging that Trump won the election, and then he's going to see what the polls say about it. People hate that. I don't disagree. We should really look hard at ourselves as Democrats on why we lost. But if you run away from who you are, you're not being introspective, you're being a coward. He should drill down on who he is. He should be a good governor, put out a good record, and that will be compelling.
Quinn is right about the aspect of authenticity. Trump got in large part because he was so authentic. People saw him as genuine. He might be rough around the edges. People might not have liked the way that he phrased things, but there's one thing that was definitely the case. He said what he really thought. Voters hate unauthentic people. And I experienced this very clearly in my time in politics. People generally respected the fact that I called it the way that I see it. The other factor that she talked about was the necessity to stand by your convictions. Yes, you've got to look around at what the electorate is saying, what they're telling you about your policies. But fundamentally, your party is defined by a set of principles, or it should be, or otherwise why bother having a party anyway? You don't shop around the polls to form a view on issues. You should have some fundamental views. Her view is you need to examine why the Democrats lost, but you need to stand up for your convictions. And she continues.
Here was Newsom doing precisely what smarty pants Democrat strategists were calling for in the wake of the November elections, breaking with the left on unpopular issues, like on the trans issue. Check. Engaging with voices outside of the blue cultural bubble. Check. Experimenting with new media channels that have become dominated by right-wingers. Check. I mean, is he, in fact, checking all of the boxes?
But whose boxes are they? Right?
I mean,
Is that the voters' boxes?
Isn't this what people said that Democrats should do after the election, is what he's doing?
I don't think that we Democrats lost because we stood with transgender people.
And here is where I depart from what Quinn says. The fact is, the transgender issue was actually a big issue in the electorate's mind. After all, the most successful single advertisement in the last campaign was the they, them versus you campaign, where Harris was for they, them, Trump was for you. Also, there needs to be a breaking with certain Democrat policies. You cannot just continue with all of the policies that you took to the election. After all, that's the reason that you lost. The fact is, the Democrats do need to engage, particularly with Republicans, to find out what Republican voters are thinking, what they want. There are soft Republicans that they need to get. And if they don't engage with Republicans, they're not going to know, and they're not going to be at all impressive to those people. The problem is, at the moment, the Democrats are staying in a bubble, and that bubble is shrinking in size. And then we have the issue of Mehdi Hassan, who was an ex-MSNBC journalist, and he's supporting a Hamas-supporting student, Mahmoud Khalil, who's at Columbia University, where there's a huge furor about the issue of deporting him.
You don't? No, Dan has not articulated that at all. No law has been cited that says you can revoke his green card because of his speech. Piers, you don't know what you're talking about. You cannot revoke a green card because you don't like someone's speech.
If you support a terror group,
where's your evidence of that,
you would
Piers?
not get
Where's
a green
your evidence
card?
of that, Piers?
It's US
Piers,
Code
you can't just say stuff.
1227.
Where's your
That's the
evidence for that?
evidence.
Fuck
there's
me.
literally-
Is this really going to be
literally
two against one? You're literally both talking at me at the same time.
asked for a
I'm not
question.
two of you speak at
You
one
asked
time.
a
I can't respond to
question.
two of you.
I wasn't
No, Piers
talking.
asked me a
Asked a question,
question.
I
No,
gave you an
Piers
answer.
asked me a question, Dan.
Here we will go through US Law 1227, Section 1182, Chapter 12, on the terrorist activities definition for deportation and why Mehdi Hassan is demonstrably incorrect on the issue of Mahmoud Khalil. Okay, in terms of Mehdi Hassan, you can see that in terms of the legislation under Section B, terrorist activities, it's got any alien who is described in subparagraph B or F of Section 1182A3 of this title is deportable. Now, if we look at Section B or F, here we've got Section B, and what you can see here is number 6. Endorses or espouses terrorist activity or persuades others to endorse or espouse terrorist activity or support a terrorist organization. Now, clearly, That is what Hassan has, Mahmoud Khalil has done.
It's quite straightforward. And I would say that I do not front an organisation which has put out statements describing October the 7th as a victory. If you do, you are a supporter of Hamas.
Which organisation
If you support Hamas, you are supporting a terrorist organisation, and as such, you would be in breach.
Which organisation put that statement out, Piers?
The student group that he
claims. Which organisation?
The student group that he fronts, whatever they're called.
Group?
What's it called?
Which student group?
Whatever the CUAD.
You can't just make wild accusation without evidence.
It's not. The
CUAD did not call October the 7th a victory, as far as I'm aware.
Statement.
Hassan is remarkably aggressive for someone who's completely wrong. Or maybe that's why he's so aggressive. We found so often with Democrats and those on the left that they will speak very loudly and aggressively, as if thinking that speaking loudly and aggressively will mean that they get taken more to be correct. The fact is QAD is Columbia University apartheid divest. In other words, divesting from Israel. And I will read you the statement here. As far as the university is concerned and the organisation, which is the Columbia University apartheid divest, what they stated was this: we support liberation by any means necessary, including armed resistance. In the face of from the oppressor equipped with the most lethal military force on the planet, where you've exhausted all peaceful means of resolution, violence is the only way forward. So very clearly by that statement, they are advocating terrorism and they are supporting Hamas. So Mehdi Hassan's arguments are absolutely null and void, and he makes a lot of noise, but clearly he's wrong.
Mohammed Khalil, who a lot of Democrats have decided to come out and back, including Dick Durbin, who posted for the Senate Judiciary Democrats, free Mahmoud Khalil. Here's what the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, had to say about this individual that folks are supporting a little while ago. Let's watch.
This is not about free speech. This is about people that don't have a right to be in the United States to begin with. No one has a right to a student visa. No one has a right to a green card. We have a right to deny you for virtually any reason. But I think being a supporter of Hamas and coming into our universities and turning them upside down and being complicit in what are clearly crimes of vandalization. If you told us that's what you intended to do when you came to America, we would have never let you in.
13 members of the Democrats in the House who are signing a letter to free him. I'm not sure how much they actually know. I'm not sure how much anybody actually knows yet about his involvement and who he really is. Is this a good hill to die on for Democrats right now while they're trying to fix things for the party, James?
I thought the Republicans were the free speech party. I'm a little bit confused because they were always talking about the virtues of free speech. If he committed a crime, then that's one thing. If he exercised free speech rights, that's another thing. But
here, Carville tries to make the free speech argument and talking about, the issue of free speech and if he hasn't broken the law, etc., etc. As we've seen earlier, the fact is Hassan has broken the terms of his visa and therefore he's ripe for deportation. He hasn't followed the strictures of that visa. Advocating terrorism or supporting terrorism excludes Hassan, and therefore he should be deported. Making this, as Carville is trying to do, a free speech issue is not correct. This guy is not a citizen of the United States. And then Carville on the United States itself.
McMillan or Wilson, one of them said, let's get out. I think right now, and I'm being very serious, I'm 80 years old, I think this is the most serious crisis that this country has ever faced. I think the entire idea of the United States is in jeopardy. I really do. I think it's fundamentally that profound a problem. And I think if the Democrats act clever, act determined, understand where they stand at this moment in history, I think that it would be very successful.
Here, Carville is plainly delusional. the most serious crisis the United States has ever had. Really, wow. How about the War of Independence, the War of 1812, the American Civil War, World War I, World War II, the Great Depression, and the Cold War? There are numerous others as well. I don't understand Carville's rationale here other than trying to push a Democrat agenda, given that Trump is hammering the Democrats. And then we have Jake Tapper pushing Dr. Sebastian Gorka on claims from anonymous USAID sources.
Washington Post that propagated the Russia collusion hoax for the last 8 years?
Well, regardless of the Russia...
No, not regardless. You're quoting the Washington Post to me, which is as effective as posting for me or quoting to me any other pillar of the fake news industrial complex. I really couldn't care less what the Washington Post or the New York Times says, especially when it's anonymous government officials. If it's true, put your name to it. If it's not, shut up.
Well, let me ask you then, just in general, are any of these cuts to foreign aid or USAID, have any of them intruded on your counterterrorism priority?
Gorka here has a real go at Jake Tapper about Washington Post and how much of a legitimate source it is when the Washington Post is actually writing about right-wing issues versus left-wing issues. The thing is, some people from USAID have gone on about issues of security and saying USAID people are working to assist the United States State Department, for example, and the Defense Department and the intelligence agencies as far as some of these nefarious groups are concerned. However, there's never any talk from them about funding, for instance, UNRWA, which is the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine, where they are located within, for instance, Gaza and working in schools and so on. And the reality is, an awful lot of them have turned out to actually be members of Hamas. Why should the US be paying for members of Hamas? A host of others have also been involved in very anti-American activity. This is not stuff that the US taxpayer should be spending money on. Gorka is right. All of these people that are quoted by the Washington Post are anonymous. They should put up or shut up. Then we have Stephen A. Smith on the state of the Democrats.
One of the many problems with the Democratic Party, outside of not being known as the party that caters to the working class, outside of being known as the party that leans so far left, you made Trump seem normal, outside of all of those things, here's the ultimate crime that's going on. They're literally sitting up on Capitol Hill, not all, but most of them, they're the party. They're literally sitting up on Capitol Hill acting like their only job is to be in opposite of Donald Trump in every way, shape, form, and fashion. That's not going to get them the midterms. That's not going to help them regain the White House.
Smith talks about the fact that the Democrats have gone very hard left on a whole lot of woke issues and other things. And what they have done in going so far to the left is that they have normalized Trump. And the reality is, and this is something that I've spoken to you about on a number of occasions, the only real policy that the Democrats have at the moment is being anti-Trump. That won't win the Democrats the White House. They are flailing at the moment. They've got no policies and they are not a cohesive unit. Now, what are your thoughts on Columbia University student Mahmoud Khalil? Please let me know in the comments below, and thanks for watching.